We're live. Jimmy Rosedriive, what's going on, man?
Jack, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm stoked to chat with you.
Dude, thank you. I know we connected on Twitter a long time ago, and I've been listening to a bunch of your stuff while I do some deep work. So this is kind of weird. Like, I go from listening to you on YouTube, and now we're talking. That's why I love having this podcast. But
Love
before
it.
we get into the music side of things, I'm really curious on your backstory. So I was doing a little bit of research and prep, and I noticed that you were in the Naval Academy when you were younger, and now you're a full time DJ. So what is that story? How did you get to this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. To kind of kick things off, it's a really weird and unique random story. I don't think anyone could even make up my progression into a music career and as a DJ. So, I grew up in a military family. I grew up as an athlete and I played baseball. So, I went to the Naval Academy and had my sights set on being a nuclear engineer and to serve on a submarine. And I go to the Naval Academy to what play baseball. That was the plan. Fall of my freshman year, I get cut from the baseball team. I was a pitcher after the plebe summer, which is essentially like a 6 week boot camp. I just never really threw hard again as a pitcher, and I didn't have a curveball. I didn't have any other pitches, so um, for whatever reason, it was ended up being like the best thing that ever happened to me because the same week that I got cut from the baseball team, I discovered what Ultra Music Festival was on YouTube. I came across Hardwell, a Dutch DJ, that it just completely blew my mind, and I was like, "Hey, I want to figure out how to DJ." So within a week of getting cut from the baseball team, I went and bought my first DJ controller, like a cheap $80, $100 one. Started teaching myself how to DJ. Then I started teaching myself how to produce, and then over the course of 3 years, 4 years, while at the Naval Academy, as a physics major, when I had free time, I would go DJ at clubs in like Baltimore, Washington D.C., little small gigs like that. And after I graduated, I moved back to San Diego, where I was born and where I'm originally from. Started getting gigs and opening opportunities for like massive internationally touring DJs. Did the local DJ opener promoter thing for a while. Then I started releasing my own remixes. The first remix that I released was a remix of All the Small Things by Blink 182. That started to get some traction with different DJs playing it in their sets. And after that, started getting invited out to different clubs across the country. And this is while I was still active duty in the Navy. So it was a pretty crazy couple of years while I was in the Navy, also DJing in different cities across the country. I did not sleep much, but the whole process and the whole experience really, I think, made me better for who I've become today, kind of thing. So
There's so much there that I want to get into, but
yeah, yeah.
the part I'm most curious about is while you're managing, being in the Naval Academy and still doing live tours at the same time, like what did your peers think and what did your family think of all this? Were they on board or were they kind of like, what are you doing?
So while I was in college at the Naval Academy, I really kind of kept it a secret because I wasn't really that good yet. By the time I was a senior, I was playing this massive event called Rally in the Alley in Baltimore. It was like a 4,000 person event, and word got out because a lot of the seniors at the academy were going, and people thought it was really cool. I didn't really like ask if I was allowed to, but in the back of my head, I probably like knew I maybe wasn't supposed to, but I never really asked. And um, so I kept it to myself for a long time. Thankfully, my mom and dad were extremely supportive, and they didn't really understand it until they saw me perform at that Rally in the Alley show in front of like all these people. And my dad was like, "Hey, I had no idea that you had this like knack for being a performer and really bringing a crowd together on stage." And looking back, listening to that set audio wise is nothing impressive about it, but just having that presence of being able to bring a crowd together and put on an awesome performance, like my dad saw that immediately and was like super supportive, and my mom has been extremely supportive. But while I was in the Navy, I really kept the two lives entirely separate. I didn't really tell anybody. And then as my name and brand grew while I was in the Navy, word kind of got out, and I was really lucky to have like supportive people around me and not really many haters in the Navy, just because I always like did my best to treat every single person with like the best respect, and I wasn't like going out of my way to hide anything necessarily. So um, yeah, I mean, it was just kind of crazy, like legitimately living two different lives for a couple of years, though.
Yeah, and to go from a college athlete to a full-time DJ, that's like a complete 180. And I had a similar story. Like I was a college football player for 2 years, ended up stopping playing, and then found this love for podcasting and writing. But I never knew that I would actually enjoy these things while I was an athlete. So when you were growing up as a baseball player, like throughout high school, going into college, did you always have this inclination for music, or did you find it after you stopped playing?
So in middle school, I snuck into a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert, and at that time, I knew I wanted to do something with music, but my identity was no, I'm an athlete. I'm not creative. I don't have this like knack for music. And I knew at that time, I was like, man, it would be so cool to be involved with music. I mean, the Red Hot Chili Peppers are my favorite band. Like, Flea is my favorite bassist. The guy's absolutely crazy on stage. And I was like, all right, I have to do something to get involved with music. Never never played the piano, never played any instruments, no classical training or anything growing up. So um, it wasn't until I really discovered DJing when I was like, hey, I think that's something that I can teach myself how to do. I don't need a band. I don't need to like have 3 or 4 people with the same level of work ethic as me. It's just something that I can, lock myself in a room, teach myself and learn as much as I can a couple hours a day for a couple years. And that's really kind of how it all started. And I just figured, why not? Like my whole life, I was an athlete. I needed something else to get, obsessed about. And that was the thing that I just went all in on.
That's such a fascinating turnaround in transition. And I know, given my experience, like with this transition from being an athlete to trying to be something else now, it was a bit tough at first because you lose that sense of identity. Because as an athlete, like you tell everybody, I'm a baseball player going to play in the Navy, I'm a football player going to play at Northwestern. And so once you lose that, it's almost hard to even know who you are. So, talk to me a little bit about how you navigated that transition from athlete to DJ in terms of like personal identity and how you saw yourself.
Yeah, I think it was a huge blessing in disguise. And I think that you're probably, transitioning from playing football, you said at Northwestern, like that's such a good academic school, and that's a big opportunity to dive into this, that you're going for something that you really love. I think it really is a testament to finding your true identity with like your own personal work ethic, because when you're with a team as an athlete on a team sport, there's a set schedule, there's a workout, there's practice, there are the games, everybody's going to be there. If you're not there, you're just going to get cut from the team, or you're not going to be a part of it. You're not going to get playing time. But when you're in your own entrepreneurial role as making a podcast, if you're a blogger, if you're a writer, if you're making your own music, there isn't anybody checking up on you. That's all on you to show up and put in the time and like get better on a consistent basis. So I think that I don't have this like exact image of what was going on in my head. I just knew that I was like, I love that, the idea of putting on an awesome show on stage. I love electronic music. I want to do that for myself. When I saw these DJs performing on YouTube at Ultra Music Festival as a freshman in college, and I don't know, I just kind of went for it, and it was really it was just a hobby at first, and it just like evolved into this, you know, big thing. Yeah, man, I think it's just all about transitioning from responsibilities in a team unit to just making stuff happen on your own.
Yeah, I think it's really cool how you can take a hobby like that or something that just starts as like, whoa, this seems really cool. And it can turn into your real life endeavor. It can turn into your job and your career. But I think a problem for a lot of people is they don't even think it's possible, right? Like they don't think big. I think most people are kind of trapping themselves with this artificial ceiling they place on themselves, in terms of like, I have to get this set career, I have to get this set job. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting because if I think about myself back in high school, even as a kid, like I always had this inclination to think really big. I was like, I didn't just want to be a high school football player. I had to be a college football player. I had to try to make the NFL. And I think I'm kind of transitioning now to like with the writing and podcasting, I'm thinking really big. But I'm curious for you, like, do you see that overlap from your baseball career and even as a kid, like that idea of thinking bigger than most other people and setting expectations for yourself on just a completely different level?
100%, man. And I'll dive into what Rosedriive means as well, and I think it really aligns with what you're doing with your life. Um, but yeah, I was the same way with baseball. I was like, I I don't really care about high school. I did care about high school baseball, but I was always like, I I wanted to be a pro baseball player growing up. It was never like good enough to just play baseball and be at the same level. Like I always had um, a drive for like wanting more. Like you're saying. I don't know exactly what kicked off wanting to go for this DJ thing as a full on career and touring internationally and playing all over the place. But I think just genuinely having something that you love, like making music and DJing and crafting a couple different songs together that can make something entirely new on the fly live in front of people. um I don't know. It just really inspired me to like go after more, man. I don't know if that really answered the question, but
No, I think I didn't do a great job framing the question, but I think a better way to frame the question and what I'm curious about is like, where does that drive to shoot for huge things come from for you?
uh, I don't know. I think I've really always been a very independent person. I really enjoy working on things by myself and just knowing that no one else is really going to do the work for me. I have to figure out a way, and that's um yeah. It's a hard question, dude. I have to be honest. I don't know where the drive comes from. It just is like I don't know, something I haven't given much thought to, just kind of like a part of me. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, 100%. No, I totally feel that. And I felt that my whole life, like this drive to want to do more and succeed. And for me, after doing some reflection and introspection, I feel like it almost comes from a deeper sense of or a place of insecurity. Whereas when I was a kid, I was playing on like the older baseball teams, the older football teams, and I never felt like I was quite good enough. And so I think it almost caused me to like overachieve, relative
Yeah.
to everybody else. But that word you keep using, drive, obviously your name, your stage name is Jimmy Rosedriive, and I saw a quick little clip of you explaining what that meant, and I thought it was so cool. So could we dive a little bit into what the name Rosedriive means to you, and why did you pick
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, real quick, you talking real quick to ask like where the drive comes from. I do remember one moment growing up. I'll say real quick. One quote that my grandfather said. He was a NFL scout, and I always asked him like, how do you how do you really gauge someone's potential as like a football player, like translating from college to the NFL, and like how do you gauge potential? And I was always fascinated with the idea of potential. And he told me, he's like, hey, Jimmy, no matter what you want to do in life, your potential is unlimited. And I had this thing in my head where I was like, the only thing that would haunt me at the end of my life was that if I did not reach my full potential. So the fact that we have this unlimited potential, I have that's like the number one thing that's the most important thing to me is reaching my full potential. So now I'll backtrack into Rosedriive. I wanted to get that out really quick. Um, so Rosedriive, there's three parts to it. You have the rose, you have the drive part, and then you have the two eyes. The rose comes from operating from a place of love in life. Like at any opportunity, in any interaction with somebody, you can operate from a place of love, from a place of fear, or a place of hate. So if you operate from a place of love, you're always going to win in life. You're always going to help other people level up. You're going to help them, have a better day. The rose is symbolic of love, uniting people through music on the dance floor in a unique experience. The drive is, everybody has their own unique path in life, something that you have to figure out for yourself, not something that your parents, your siblings, your brother, your coworker, anybody else can figure out for you, not your friends. Um, Something that you just have to uniquely figure out for yourself, like you're currently doing right now, and like I figured out. And who would have guessed, going into the military and then going to be a DJ. The two I's are both lowercase in a Rosedriive, and it's symbolic of the self and who you currently are, and the second I is the person that you need to become. And in order to get to that other I, you need to implement the skill sets, the habits, and all the different work ethic and hard work required to fulfill that path. So that's really what Rosedriive means. And in the past, I've said it a little bit smoother, but that's the rundown that I can give right now.
I love it. And where did you come up with that originally? Was there like a one moment where you're like Rosedriive, like that's the name, or has it been a constant like tweaking and evolution?
It's been a constant tweaking and evolution. So when I was a senior year going into the Naval Academy, I did a program. I was a detailer, so as a senior going into senior year, my peers and my classmates, we trained the incoming high schoolers, and basically it's like a 3 week period where you're just getting shit on, like a full initiation, and you're basically putting the incoming class through a rite of passage, like complete hell. And that had just finished up. I went out to San Diego for 1 month before going back to the academy. And I was trying to get DJ gigs. I'd never played an actual proper venue before, just like random little house parties. And a promoter through a friend of a friend was like, "Hey, can you DJ this coming Saturday?" And it was like a Tuesday, and I didn't even have Jack. I did not even have a DJ name, so I was like, "Hey, I need to come up with something." And I have a nephew named Teddy and a niece named Rosemary, so I was like, "Hey, my DJ name's Teddy Rose," and it was like, "Okay, cool, put that on the flyer." And then like I announced it, like, "Hey, I'm playing at this place in Pacific Beach, come out." And so I went by Teddy Rose for a couple of years, but it didn't really feel right because I would always people be like, "Hey, is your real name Teddy Rose?" Be like, "No, it's actually Jimmy Grant." And I'd have some people at shows calling me Teddy, some people calling me Jimmy. It was just like this weird thing. And I wanted to come up with something that could be representative of like a community and have way more meaning and impact. I mean, I like the fact that it was, representative of my niece and nephew and everything, but something that everybody could latch onto and not just like a singular name. So when the pandemic hit, that's where Rosedriive came in, and to my head, I was like, "Hey, I want to make something that's symbolic that anybody can really latch onto meaning wise."
That's super cool. And I love the two eyes, like the current self who you are and the highest self who you could be. And an interesting parallel that you say is like to become that higher self, you have to level up like your habits, your character traits, your beliefs, and your skill set.
Yeah,
And that's something that Alex Hormozy talks about all the time from an entrepreneurial lens. But I think it's even broader than that. It's fulfilling your human potential. And kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, like I was so obsessed with that idea of potential from being a little kid too. So I was super obsessed with sports video games, and I would like build these teams, and I would become obsessed with the players who had like the A+ potential. And my
yeah,
goal was like to try to let these players reach their potential. And now I'm seeing the parallel in my real life. It's like I'm obsessed with this version of myself who I think I could be in the future. But as an entrepreneur, it's tough because your potential is unlimited, like you said, right? Like your growth is purely dependent on you. And I felt this like cognitive dissonance in the past couple months of like, I know I'm not living up to the standard I could be. Like my habits aren't as good as they could be, my routines, my fitness, my nutrition, my work ethic. And that's something to deal with of like, having this high performing nature of being obsessed with potential is like you can never quite live up to it. So I'm curious for you, like with this traveling lifestyle and like always moving around, how do you make sure that the stuff you control on a daily basis, your mindset, your habits, all that, how does that stay in place despite this hectic lifestyle you're living?
Yeah, I think it's really just having like daily non-negotiables and doing research and prepping like what's available to you for a workout, or doing research on, hey, is this hotel I'm staying at or going to have a gym? um I mean, regardless of if I'm playing a show or not, like I work out, I lift 5 times a week. Every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I lift. I've lifted 103 times this year, and that's with touring. So today was my 103rd lift of the year. And I think you just have to have some level of consistency in the, like, your mornings, your midday, or your end of the day. And regardless of if you're traveling or not, you just have to make it happen. Like I don't really have a more poetic way to say it. It's like, so it's it's so basic, but yeah, dude, I it hasn't always been that way. I haven't been this regimented with touring. Like I've had to, have the late nights and going to the after parties and not getting enough sleep to experience like how bad that feels, to then get me realigned that, like, hey, this is important. These workouts need to happen regardless of the tour schedule. Um, yeah, man, it's just having that vision of where you want to be and who you want to become, and just sticking to it regardless of your schedule and other commitments.
I think the discipline of having those daily non-negotiables is so crucial, and I'm kind of like a productivity, fitness, health nerd, so I'm always curious, like for people, what are their daily non-negotiables? So obviously, you talked about the gym 5 days a week, but what are some other staples in your life that like you need to get done on a daily basis so that you're
Yeah,
functioning at your best?
yeah. A big thing for me is walking. Like if I could walk 3 times a day for 30 minutes a pop, if I could walk 90 minutes a day every single day, I would. And no matter what, I walk at least once for 30 minutes a day. Just helps in my digestion. I feel like I sleep so much better, especially if it's like earlier in the day, get some sunlight right away. Um, I think, you know, I would say during the pandemic, I had a um, very regimented routine of meditating, writing out affirmations, then going for a walk, then lifting. Like I think I do those things still, but not every single day. Maybe 2 times a week, once a week. That the affirmations, the meditation, because I think if you get it too optimized, you can get a little too dependent on the routine. Like, oh damn, like I didn't get my cold shower today, so like screw it, I don't feel like going to the studio. I feel a little off because I didn't get the cold shower in, or you know what I mean, like stupid things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important for everybody to have some sort of rhythm for those health hacks. I mean, I think you're probably well aware of all the different laundry lists of things on Twitter that people share, like do these things to level up. But really, for me, the walks, the daily sunlight, the lifting, trying to meditate at least a couple times a week. I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to meditate every single day, but I'll be honest, I don't get to it. Sometimes I end up working on a remix or a song, or I'm working on a DJ transition routine for 6 straight hours, and I don't get the meditation in. But I see a ton of value in it, man. It's so good for you.
100%. And it's fascinating to me, these parallels or these crossovers between different careers. So, like, as a writer, people see the finished product, right? They see the Twitter thread, they see the tweet, they see the newsletter. And for you, they see the performance, they see the YouTube video. But what people don't see is all these processes and habits that go on in the background. And that's the part I'm so fascinated with, because if you just nail those processes and routines, the result takes care of itself. And
Yeah.
I've noticed that in terms of my own habits, like when I'm locked in and getting all those things in, like the meditation, the journaling, all that, the work actually becomes better. So for you, like getting into a good flow or a process in terms of your creation, like how do you get into a creative flow for your work?
I think the days that I lift, I am 100% more creative. Like I know for a fact I just am. Um, I, I don't know if you dug into Steven Pressfield at all.
Yes, yes, The War of Art and Turning Pro.
Yeah.
Those are I read Turning Pro on my flight here to Buenos Aires because it's like, all right, I'm a full-time entrepreneur now. I got to get in that right mindset like I'm a professional. Now I have
Yeah.
slipped off some bad habits and I got to get back into it. But yeah, anyway, Stephen Pressfield is great.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be very hell bent on I have to lift at 5:30 in the morning and then eat breakfast at this time and then go right into the studio. But you know, like I mentioned with the travel schedule, that's just not how life works. And like Steven Pressfield talks about resistance and not creating more resistance than we already have in life. Like I don't know, I think it's just like a creative muscle where you just do it every day even if you don't feel like doing it. You get to it and you're either creating music. I either looking up new music to create some sort of new DJ routine. And I don't have this like specific 3-step method to get into a creative mode, but I think I have this muscle that I can just kind of turn on, and it can be on a plane, it can be in the hotel room, it can be in a hotel lobby where, all right, Jimmy, like time to get after it. You're gonna make something right now, and sometimes I don't, but um, I don't know, man. I think it's I used to be way more sensitive to needing every situation to be absolutely perfect to create, but that's just not it's just not the way the world works. Otherwise, you're missing on so many opportunities to like write something great or make awesome music. I don't have too much else to add on that, but
That's honestly probably a good thing that you're not too dependent on a routine or flow because, like you said, you want to be the type of person that can work on a plane or on a bus or in a hotel studio. Because if
yeah,
you get so dependent on that routine and then you don't have it, like your whole day is thrown off. But if you can be super flexible, and I've tried to adopt the identity like I can work in the morning, I can work at night, I can work in a coffee shop, I can work in my apartment. And that has been really helpful for me to not become overly dependent on an environment or a perfect morning routine to get into that creative flow. Now, in an ideal world, I would do those couple good habits in the morning. I would walk, I would get sunlight, I would meditate, and I feel like that
yeah,
does help my writing session. But being able to do it when those things aren't perfect, that's where the difference comes in. That's the difference between saying fuck it and like the day is over and you're just not going to work, or you're still going to show up and do the work regardless.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I I've created like awesome things I'm really proud of, or had really cool ideas after 3 hours of sleep. The the morning after a show, and I can't sleep on the flight, and I pull out the laptop, and boom, there's a whole new remix idea or a melody that's like all ready to go. So, um, yeah, I think having the balance of those habits that don't let you get too far off the path of like being your sharpest self is what allows you to do those things. I think that's the thing that I need to tie into this because um, even though there might not be this 3-step process for like getting in studio mode, I think all the lifts and those walks and just staying healthy, taking care of yourself allows you to like operate when you're not 100%.
100%. I completely agree. And so I'm curious, like when you're in this flow state and you're creating, what does it feel like? Like, what are the emotions and what is the mindset when you're in this creative state?
I mean, it feels like an entirely different world. Sometimes, I mean, an entire day can go by and it feels like maybe an hour. Like I like
Mhm.
time moves at an entirely different speed when I'm in the flow, either in the studio or DJing and playing shows. I mean, I play shows, a 90-minute set or a 120-minute set, and it flashes by like in an instant. I I've been trying to figure out a way to describe how it feels, and it's really indescribable, to be honest. I don't know if you feel that way with writing when you get in the zone, but
Definitely. And I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It was James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, and Ryan Holiday. And he was talking about how when he gets in that flow state, it's almost like he's living in the document. Like there's nothing on the outside that even matters. Like your entire being is in the document or it's in the music. And there's nothing better than being in that flow state. And I've been reading a little bit of this book called Flow by Mihaly. I'm gonna butcher the last
yeah,
name.
it's
I'm
a
not
bit.
even gonna
I
try.
know what you're talking about.
But yeah, but that book is awesome and it talks about basically how optimal human experience is living in that flow state 24/7. And so what I'm trying to do now is like I know when I write, I get in this flow state, but I need to cultivate flow in other areas of my life as well, like playing sports or in the gym or even on a walk. Like and the more you can be in flow state throughout your whole life, the more optimal your human experience is. But I'm curious for you, like is there a big difference between operating by yourself in the studio versus performing live? Or is it the same type of flow state that you enter in both?
It's a really good question. It's the same type of flow state. If I'm in the studio, I typically like to be completely by myself. I don't like it. I don't even like not just someone talking to me. I don't even like people being in the same room. Not like even if it's the other side of the room. I don't like people being around me when I'm like creating. But it's a really similar feeling when you're on stage because if you were here in the studio right now and I put my flash drive in the CDJs and you pulled up all the songs on there, Jack, you'd be like, Jimmy, why do you have 4,800 songs downloaded on here? Because even though those songs aren't being produced live, every show is different. The way that I mix, I could not exactly replicate two shows the exact same because I'm layering acapellas, I'm looping tracks, I'm doing 8-bar loops, 16-bar loops, and bringing in different tracks, doing 3-track mixing at the same time. So it's not producing music in the moment live, but it's almost like live remixing and taking two tracks that might be kind of like boring or overdone or like something that everybody's heard before, but bringing it together so that people are hearing something live that they've never heard anywhere else, not on the internet, not on a random mix on SoundCloud or at someone else's show. Like, so it's super super similar. I wouldn't say that there's much difference. The only thing that is different is dealing with people that might like wave you down or try and get my attention when I'm on stage. That is something I have to battle, obviously, that I don't have to battle in the studio. And you're reading the crowd. You're trying to see how people are vibing while you're mixing and catering to like, man, they really seem to be vibing with this era of hip hop. I'm gonna like throw a couple more of this general vibe, or oh damn, Dua Lipa's popping off. I'm gonna drop like some more Dua Lipa stuff later on, or things like that.
Yeah, I guess my perception of like how you actually perform isn't even correct. Like my preconceived notion, because I expected like you already had the set ready and then you just play it. But what you're saying is like it's kind of an in the moment freestyle thing, right? Like you're creating as you go.
Yeah, so I mean, every DJ is different. I think the traditional DJ that people see on massive EDM stages, they have a set list, they'll play a song. They're kind of like track selectors, and they probably make mashups. I've done this in the past too, and I've recently changed this. Um, where you make mashups, you produce mashups in the studio that are really hard to mash up live, to where you can play more tracks and do more mashups on the stage. But um, so there's like a 2 to 4 minute period there where technically like the DJ is not doing anything. Like they're up there hyping people up, yo, get on the mic, and people are jumping
Yeah.
around. But what I'm really working on to craft my show is that there is never that 2 minute period where I'm not doing something. Like I want to be taking just an acapella, not even a song, and like layering that over another song live, looping that acapella in a build, dropping that into a third song. So like it's taking a ton of practice, and I have a bunch of routines. And the way that I organize my music is based all, organized in the same key, so that, I have 3 or 4 songs all in like C minor, for example, like a bass line track, a build, and then a drop, and maybe an acapella, and I'm doing live mashups of those songs. Um, yeah, I don't know if I don't know if that answered the question completely, but a little different, a little more into what I'm trying to do on stage.
I find it fascinating how it's this thing that is in the moment and it's like this push and pull with the audience. And
Yeah.
this is a weird parallel, but Jordan Peterson talks about when he's giving live lectures, it's actually like a conversation with the audience because
Mm.
he's reading body language and he's really noticing like are people grasping what he's doing and are they paying attention and understanding? And it's probably so similar to you like having to read the audience's body language. Like, are people, do they seem engaged? Do they seem locked in? So, is that just a feeling or is it more of a thing you notice through observation? Or how can you really tell if the audience is vibing with what you're doing?
It's reading body language. Do people feel comfortable? Are they smiling? Like, are they engaging with their friends next to them? How much are they moving? Are they singing along to what you're playing? And I think I want to elaborate a little bit where I have all these songs that are loaded in. I don't play 4,800 songs in a given live DJ set, but every I have certain routines and combinations, and I've got hundreds of routines and combinations that I've done live in the past or that I'm working on and always trying to improve the set. Um, but the order of when those mashups come are always changing based off of how the crowd is vibing and the order and the energy. Like, is this a daytime set and am I opening for a huge DJ? Is it a 4 p.m. festival set? Am I the headliner at a nightclub at midnight? Like, there's all these different intangibles. And is this like a luxury nightclub and people are, flossing, spending a lot of money? Like, there's a certain vibe of that type of nightclub. Is this just like a massive music venue and people raging in the pit? So that's why I'm saying it's like it's never the same thing at any given time. And then from a geographical standpoint, um, and like when you're on stage, I would almost equate it to if you're traveling when you're working out, you're not used to like the gym that you're used to at home, right? Like the dumbbells are a different size, the bench is like a little bit wider or a little bit more narrow. The machines are different, and when you're on stage doing that live, like the table might be a little bit higher than you're used to, a little bit lower. Um, so yeah, it's always different in every given circumstance.
Do you ever get nervous before stepping on stage?
Dude, I am more comfortable right before getting on stage or on stage than anything else in my life. I'm more
Wow.
comfortable in front of 3,000 people on stage than I am right now talking to you, or just any sort of thing in life. That's when I'm most comfortable.
Was
I'm
it
not.
always like that?
What's nerve wracking is playing in front of an empty crowd.
Yes. Okay.
So I mean, as I've grown my career, I've played plenty of shows where there's like 20 people in the audience, and those are nerve wracking because you're like, damn, how do I make this fun for these people? Um, but no, it hasn't always been like that. I think I've done. I need to start tracking the exact number, but I've done like 270 to 280 ish shows at this point. So no, man, I definitely have not always been that way, and just putting in the reps like all the time in the studio with the DJ, the CDJs, the DJ gear, all the time doing it live. Um, yeah, definitely hasn't always been like that.
That's interesting that you say you're more nervous in a setting of 20 people than 3,000. And there's this podcaster writer that I listen to, James Smith from the UK. He's big into like health and fitness. And he talks about like when he public speaks in front of crowds of 1,000, it's not scary at all. But if he has to give a talk to 10 to 15 people, it's actually more nerve wracking because like you're more aware of each individual person within the audience and like you're able to
Oh,
really connect with them versus when it's like thousands of people, it's like everybody kind of just blends together. Is that kind of how it is for you?
100%. I will. Okay, so I've done a couple small speaking engagements, like about building an entrepreneurial brand, and I played at a university in Quebec in February, and before the show, I spoke to 40 or 50 entrepreneur. I forget if it was the business school or the an entrepreneurial program. I did like a 45-minute talk on building your own brand, essentially, and there were like 30 people there, and I was like losing my shit because I will say this for anybody that wants to do speaking, do not have the mindset of a DJ where you're always reading the crowd and like what their vibe is. Because if you do that as a speaker, you're gonna overanalyze the shit out of everything. Like, because when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking, people are they're processing everything you're saying. They're like trying to make sense of your story or the message that you're trying to have. So I go into this talk with the mindset of a DJ, like comparing it to, people having like a couple of drinks and I'm on the dance floor with their friends having a blast, like dancing around. And like, I'm like, man, people are not having that much fun at this talk. But nonetheless, I still had good feedback after the talk. But in the moment, I was like, oh man, it was painful. But yeah, it's funny comparing the two. Like, speaking to 40 people at the school before the show, nerve wracking. Being in stage in front of 4,000 of them, the entire school is at this concert. I was like totally chill and all good. It's hilarious, but yeah.
Yeah, completely different context and like completely not maybe completely different skill set, but definitely a bit of a different skill set. But I'm sure it translates over.
Oh, totally different
Um,
skill set. Yeah.
yeah, but I kind of want to dive more into this travel lifestyle that you're living. So, where have you been in the past couple months?
The last couple of months, I've been in Nova Scotia, Canada, Quebec, Barcelona, Spain, Indiana, Texas, North Carolina. Um, yeah, that's kind of what's coming to mind right now. Where else? Georgia a couple times. Yeah,
Gotcha. And has it been mostly like colleges, or has it been a lot of like music festivals?
really everything. I mean, nightclubs, music festivals, college fraternity parties, like proper university run concerts, like literally everything, like college bars. Yeah, anything you can imagine.
Gotcha. And I gotta ask, just out of curiosity, like, what has been the response from girls? Like, given that you're this DJ, you're up on stage, they're probably like, I don't know. I think that's a pretty high status position, especially for that context. So, what has that part of your lifestyle been like as you're living this?
Oh, I mean, everybody wants to get a picture with the DJ. They want people want to come up on stage, be on stage, or meet you beforehand and have a couple drinks or afterwards. It's cool. Like after a while, it gets a little old. In terms of like people's intentions with it. So it's a lot of fun, man. Like I'm really thankful for all the friends that I've made all across the world. Like legitimately, any city I know somebody to to some degree. Um, yeah, I mean, with the girls, like it definitely doesn't hurt in terms of like um anything with that. Like I don't know exactly how much in detail you wanted me to go, but yeah, it's not a bad thing.
That's super cool. Yeah, as much detail as you're willing to share, but I can imagine like living that lifestyle. It seems from the outside like a rock star type of lifestyle, but I guess does it feel like that on a day to day basis?
Oh, definitely not on a day-to-day basis. I mean, today I went to the DMV, renewed my driver's license. I went to my local gym. I went to Starbucks. Like I'm a normal guy. Like
Yeah.
it's definitely not a rock star lifestyle on a day-to-day basis. like I don't have people recognizing me everywhere I go by any means yet. That hopefully at some point we'll get to that. But I don't know, man. That's never been like one of my main drivers, that kind of attention. But um, yeah, man. I mean, ultimately, my goal is always to like create the most fun for everybody involved. And typically, if like any event has a lot of girls there, like everybody involved is going to be pretty happy. So I think it's always a blessing if like if that side of the event does well.
Do you have any crazy stories like from a specific event where it's like, holy shit, like I'm really living this lifestyle?
Um, I would say in when I played in Tokyo, um, there was just like such a nice like setup in the green room. Like backstage when I arrived, they had you know all this alcohol, all this fruit, all these snacks just like lined up in like this super nice room with leather couches, and they had like a welcoming party there for me. There's like 20 people in the room that wanted to like get pictures and hang out and take shots together and stuff. Um, I mean, they had like this tray that like lit up with shot glasses for everybody in the room. Yeah, I mean that was a little overwhelming because like in the U.S. or in Canada, they're just that's just not a thing. At least like for the venues that I played here, but I was really blown away when I went to Tokyo, and that was in January 2020. So at that point in my career, I was like, damn, this is like for real stuff. It kind of blew my mind just having that like entourage of like welcome of people when when getting to the club.
Yeah. And I'm curious, like, how do you view the inevitable fame that could potentially come from this career? Because if you keep progressing, if you keep growing, and I know that's probably your goal to keep growing, is there any part of you that feels like a drawback? Like, oh, I don't know if I want to be recognized on the street? Or how do you think about that?
I think that I really like the idea of it because if people, the more that people get to know me and the more they dig into my background and my values and the way that I live my life, I think that it can be a really good example um, for people that want to become a DJ or be involved in the music industry. That it's not just like sex, drugs, and alcohol, crazy rock star lifestyle. Like it's the habits behind the scenes that get you where you really want to be in life. And believe it or not, a lot of the artists that you see online, like living these crazy lavish lifestyles, a lot of it's a little overindulged and they exaggerate how much they're drinking, how much they're partying, and they don't show how much hard work there really is behind the scenes. And I think it's really deceiving to the generation younger than us that are 16, 17, 18, 19 entering college. They just see all these wins and the success and the fame and a lavish lifestyle and all these things, and they don't see all the habits and the hard work and the dedication and the being told no hundreds of times. I mean, Jack, for every show that you see on my social media page, there have been over a dozen people that told me no, didn't reply to my email, or still don't reply to me. So as much success as I have now and all the tours and playing internationally, like still there are plenty of people that blow off Rosedriive, blow me off, and I think being really real with like the story of the come up is something that needs to happen because people just see like random TikTok stars or whoever like pop off in 6 months and they think like, oh, like if I'm not famous like after a year of working hard, then I'm a failure, and like that's far from the truth.
That's been my main takeaway from this conversation is that no matter what you're trying to do, it all comes back to the habits and the hard work that you put on behind the scenes. And people don't see that. And I think it's so cool that you want to show that with people because even from my perspective, before entering this conversation, I painted this picture of you in my head as like living this rock star lifestyle, which in some respects you are. But the stuff that goes unnoticed is really what is the driver for your success and the dealing with failure. Like people don't see that. People see the big show, but they don't see the 10 times you were turned down. So
Oh yeah,
how do you navigate that? How do you deal with being turned down?
I think being told no or any sort of failure, like being successful in life is all about minimizing that time that you care about that. It's just like, okay, another no means that I'm that much closer to a yes. Okay, who's the next person that I can reach out to for a show? Who on my team needs to reach out to another person to coordinate another show? It's always about moving the ball forward. And a lot of times, Jack, like a lot of the shows that I've done, people blew me off at first, but that effort of reaching out and letting people know who I am and what I'm doing paid off 6 months down the line, a year down the
Mhm.
line, 2 years later, like, oh, this guy's doing stuff now. This is the guy that emailed us 2 years ago, and now he's doing this full on tour. Like, we'll book you in Minneapolis, or we'll book you in Austin, Texas, or San Francisco, whatever it is. So that's the other side of it too, where there's a lag, but there's a lag time between your hard work and what that's that winning that solution. Like, yeah, so many of my shows, it's not like, hey, uh, let's do a show at your venue next month. Okay, cool. How much? This is the price. Boom, all done. Like, that is not how this works. It takes a lot of follow up, a lot of conversations, and it's a process, man. People need to know, um, you know, getting through the obscurity of people not knowing who you are, and as an artist or any sort of brand, and like with you as a podcaster, as grow your audience and you have more and more people on your podcast, you've done more episodes, and like you're just going to attract guests with larger followings and people that have different life experiences that are going to add value to your listeners and stuff. So um like, just think of all the times that you maybe reached out to for podcast guests you didn't hear back from, but maybe 3 months from now they're like, hey, you just had my friend on, so now I'll come on your podcast, kind of thing.
100%. And that's why all you can do is just put in the reps like when they come. Because honestly, I see each podcast episode, and I'm sure you see each DJ set as like it's another rep in the bank. And you get a little bit
Yeah.
better each time. And then once you're finally at the point where you're going to play this huge show, or maybe for myself in a couple of years when I'm finally going to have this like huge guest on, now I'm ready for it. Whereas in the moment right now, if I were to have like Jordan Peterson on, for example, I don't think I'm ready, right? Or maybe for you at the start when you were starting off, if you had to play in front of a million people at Lollapalooza, maybe you wouldn't quite be ready. But because you put the reps in over the years, you eventually get to that point where just because you got so obsessed with the process and the systems and the daily habits, like by the time that big event comes, like now you're ready for it.
Dude, 100%. I mean, there are things that I've gone for way back, like looking at like, okay, if this show that I really wanted happened, I would not have been ready for it. There's no way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to butcher this quote. I don't remember who it's from, but I think in order to be lucky in life, you have to put in the hard work. Like, luck only comes to you if you're ready for it. So I'm going to mess this quote up in it, but the general idea of luck for like people that work hard is like, uh, it's like luck is like a bus. It comes around to your stop every now and then, but you can only get on that bus if you're ready. But if you don't
I
get on
love
it this
that.
time, it just means you weren't ready. It's going to come back again. Just keep putting in the hard work. So that's how I equate luck, and that's not mine. Someone else listening to this might be like, "Hey, Jack, this is what it's from." It's from some podcast. I listen to that, but yeah,
I love that analogy. That's such a cool way to think about it. And it just makes me think back to like, okay, what are the daily habits that I have to do? So when that bus comes around, I'm the type of person that is ready for that moment. Like I've created that identity and I've actually formed this persona of, okay, I'm ready to have a big guest on. Or for you, I'm ready to perform in front of a million people. But I know you have a lot of big things coming up, like with this upcoming tour. So tell me a little bit about where you're going to be. Like, what are the dates? What does this next year or so look like for you?
yeah, man. I mean, it's going to be the biggest tour I've ever done. Last fall, we did, I think, 35 cities in about 2 months, 2.5 months. This fall and winter is going to be even bigger. Going to be doing US, going to be doing Canada, um, UK, probably Asia again. So I mean, it's going to be literally all over the place. And I think with this new type of DJ content that I'm doing in the studio, we're going to be doing it live. Bringing my videographer Tim. coming out, getting all this content so people can feel like they're on stage with me while I'm DJing and capture all these in the moment live mashups like I was talking about with you. Um, I think that's the thing I'm most excited about, is creating awareness for that kind of mixing the rest of the year at like all these different shows and doing it live when the pressure's on and like there's a chance that I could mess up. I like the idea of documenting that.
That's so hype. I hope at some point, like we're in the same spot where I'm somewhere where you're DJing because that would be so fun to be able to see it live. I've been watching on YouTube and stuff, but I hope we overlap. I'm sure we will at some point in the
Absolutely,
future.
we
But
100% we will.
yeah, definitely. Last question here to leave it off. What would you tell somebody who is interested in potentially being a DJ? They've seen a movie, they've seen a show, they're like, damn, that looks cool, but they don't really know where to start or they don't feel like it's a realistic path. What would you tell to that person?
I would tell them to not worry about what all the other DJs are doing, all the superstar DJs, any friends or any peers that they have, what they're doing. Just think about what can you do today that would move you one step closer to being a DJ. Is that buying the $70 DJ Go Lite by Newmark and downloading that and then starting to download songs? Is it reaching out to a bar down the street to say, hey, I'll DJ your bar for free. I'll bring out this many people, or reaching out to a nightclub asking if you can go practice on their gear. Like whatever it is, like always ask yourself, what is the one smallest action I can take today to move myself forward? And I think that kind of like makes it less overwhelming and not trying to, become Martin Garrix overnight or anything.
I think that's really good advice. And I ask because I have a couple friends in mind that I know would be like killer DJs. They have such a good music taste. They're just really good people. They know how to read a crowd. I'm thinking back in high school, like who are the people that were DJing the house parties? And it's like, I think these people could have an inclination towards it, but so many people probably just write it off as like, oh, that would never be me. That's not realistic. So I think just hearing from you and hearing like your process and your story, like anybody could do it, but you have to be willing to put in the reps. You have to be willing to put in the daily habits, or else, yeah, you're never going to be able to do it. So I think that's super valuable insight.
Yeah, I honestly too, I think something I'll add is if anyone listening or anyone that wants to be a DJ, if you're hell bent on it, I think it's really important to have another job so that you have an income until you built it up to where you're actually making considerable money off of the shows that you're doing, so that you're not living off of random bar gigs that are $200 a night, $300 a night, and then you're kind of labeled as this like local bar DJ, and it's really hard to get burst out of that bubble. Um, and have a solid income and be able to fund your DJ passion and project from a whole other job. So that's something to consider for anybody listening.
That's a good insight as well. So you had another job at the start of this journey yourself?
Yeah, so like to just clarify, because I think it's really confusing for a lot of people that aren't necessarily in the military and the Navy. So I graduated from the Naval Academy, and then I was a commissioned officer. I was stationed on a ship. So I was an electrical engineering officer, active duty in the U.S. Navy, while I started my DJ gig. So I was working, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. on a U.S. naval vessel as an engineering officer for the first couple of years that I started this. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so inspiring, honestly, bro. Like you should 100% lean into that, share that story because people see you now, see you on stage, see you doing big things, but like that could inspire somebody to be like, okay, this guy was able to find time outside of this 12-hour a day job to do this and make his dream come reality. Like maybe I can do it too. So I feel inspired. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah. No, it's, hey, anybody can do it. It's just making time and, you know, cutting out the things that don't matter. That's really it.
Right. Right. That's awesome. And so to leave it off, where can people find you at and what can they expect from you in the next couple months or so?
Yeah, Rosedriive, Rosedriive. Instagram is my main social media. My music's on Spotify and SoundCloud, and then the rest of this year, if you search Rosedriive on YouTube, I mean, I've got a handful of DJ sets on there right now. They're hour mixes, and they're kind of the regular style of DJing that I had mentioned that most people do. And there's going to be a lot of fast paced, more um, performance style mixing type of mixes coming up on the YouTube the rest of the year.
Sweet. I'm about to throw one on myself and hit a little bit of a deep work sesh. But
Hell
dude, I
yeah.
really appreciate you taking the time to come on. This has been super interesting hearing what goes on behind the scenes of the life of a DJ.
Absolutely. No, Jack, it was a pleasure. You're a great interviewer. The sky's the limit for your podcast. And I'm excited to see who you have on in the future and would love to link in person for a podcast episode or host you at a Rosedriive show and make some awesome content in person together in some shape or form.
Dude, I would be honored. I'm looking forward to that. I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. I appreciate it.
Any Jack Moses listeners that want to come to our Rosedriive show, you can get guest listed. Just reach out to Jack and we'll make it happen.
Yes, we'll set it up. Dude, yeah,
Awesome.
that'd be
Thanks
sweet.
again.
Anyways, I appreciate you.
Likewise, it was awesome.